Okay, so Joe, welcome back to Mea Culpa. I haven't seen you. Congratulations on finally becoming a grandpa. I look forward to it one day, both of us unshaven today, but we have a lot to talk about. So, I had to just get that out there.
Yeah, thanks for the congrats. And it's great to be with you, Michael.
Yeah, congratulations. So look, I want to talk to you, for example, about Trump's rallies, because we're watching and we're seeing his rallies becoming increasingly erratic, almost like a traveling fucking carnival of conspiracy theories and lies. How do you, as the Democratic political strategist that you are, how do you see this type of messaging resonating with undecided voters, especially when you compare it to the more positive and the policy-driven rallies that Kamala Harris is putting on?
It's incredible. I mean, this thing now where he just literally stood there swaying for like 30 minutes to music in the middle of a rally, but beyond all the other stuff you're talking about. I mean, the craziness, the anger, the retribution, the revenge, talking about using the military to go after his opponents. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. I think they've clearly decided to double down on trying to, inflame his crazy MAGA base. But it's got to be helping move undecideds and independents away from him. I think, Michael. It's on the other hand, nothing has mattered, no matter how crazy or awful he gets, or how it doesn't seem to change much. I do think that he's still stuck at 46. You can double down all you want, but you can't make that bigger. I just don't think if you haven't turned out to vote for him before, there aren't more people who are going to do that. And so I think hopefully what's happening here, I think, is he's pushing people away from it, pushing them towards Kamala Harris, and can she get them out? Can she win?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole issue. It's all going to be about apathy in terms of voting. And I don't understand what the anger towards, Kamala Harris is. It's the same Biden policies and so on. But really, what was Trump's policy? And why is America really in bad shape right now? Our GDP is like 2.5 times greater than that of China, who's number 2 in the world. I mean, we have the lowest unemployment. Okay, yeah, I acknowledge things could always be better, but they could certainly be a whole lot worse. And why they give Joe Biden zero, the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure bill. You remember when Trump ran, Joe, on the infrastructure bill? Quite frankly, I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest builder. Nobody builds like I do. I'm going to build a wall. The wall's going to be a beautiful, big, gigantic, beautiful wall and all that other horse shit. All right. By the way, he never built the wall, and he lies at the rallies. Talks about, I built 200 miles worth of wall. It's not 200 that you needed. It's 20,000 miles.
Right. And then he does. No. But it's also like the whole infrastructure week. Every week. It was infrastructure week every week of Trump's presidency. Every week was going to be infrastructure week, and it never happened. He never passed an infrastructure bill, nothing. He did. It's like he said with the wall, never happened. Maybe 2% of that wall got built. Like I said at the beginning of this, 46% of the American people, if he did shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they would shrug their shoulders and say, well, he must have had a good reason. And that's why I don't think anything he does at the rallies, other than inflame them and try to energize them to turn out, which is what you're exactly right. It's about he's fighting the apathy of his own supporters now, who are looking at him, seeing a loser, I think. And more of them are leaving his rallies. And then like that 30-minute thing he did with literally swaying, while he's swaying the music,
39 minutes.
yes,
39 minutes. There's supposedly, I think somebody maybe fainted or there was some sort of medical. And so instead of going on and talking about policy or something, he's dancing. He played the Trump playlist of like Pavarotti, a bunch of like 9 or 10 songs, 39 minutes of him doing what I always refer to his dance as the two-fisted giraffe jerk-off dance. You ever see where it's like he's like jerking off two giraffes?
Yeah.
Right? You're never going to get that thought out of your head, pal.
Yeah, thanks. No, but like you saw, like Jake Tapper taking it to Youngkin a day or two ago. With Youngkin was just lying. But finally, you're starting to get some real coverage here of chasing people down and putting Trump's words out there and making people like Youngkin, just making it obvious that they continue to lie for him. And so hopefully all that is going to move people out there to get in. And with, I think the other thing is Harris has done a really good job in the last a week or so, really amplifying what Esper, and what a lot of the generals and others have been saying for quite a while about the threat Trump really represents, about, being a fascist to the core. Those quotes, I think, are starting to break through because they're in the ads now, and two, they're starting to get covered, I think, a lot more.
One of the things that I reached out before, I reached out to Kamala Harris's campaign. And I said, she's on the campaign trail and her message is a message of unity, progress, rebuilding. However, when she starts to talk about Trump's, using his own words, about being a dictator on day number 1, talking about how he says he's going to use SEAL Team 6, the military, the National Guard, to start rounding up migrants, to start rounding up critics, and so on. And that he would do this. We have no reason not to believe that he would do this if, in fact, that he wins. That was something that she talked about at her rally. And I turned around and I said, you're using the wrong word. It is not a hypothetical would. It's he will do this. Right. Because he's already done it once before. He did it to me. And thank God for a judge like federal judge Alvin K. Hellerstein, who saw through the horse shit on what they did. An unconstitutional remand based off of a fraudulent, a counterfeit document. Why does she not come out and say it? He's done it before. He has the playbook. He will run the same playbook again. And imagine this, Joe. Donald doesn't really know you from a hole in the wall. And I don't mean you, Joe Trippi. I'm talking about average Joe that's out there. He may know the name. He may have spoken to you in the past, but he doesn't know you. He doesn't care. I was by this fucker's side for almost a decade and a half, and he did it to me. So imagine what he will do to you. He doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care about the rule of law. He only cares about himself, which, of course, is the narcissism that we all talk about.
That's right. That's what one of the first things was, knowing how supportive you'd always been and loyal and all that. And I know how much of your life work was working for him. To see what he would do, what he did do to you, is to know that he will do that to anyone. That is it. Nothing, and particularly now that the Supreme Court granted, his immunity thing. There's nothing that's going to stop him from exactly delivering on what you're saying. That he will do this. It's going to happen. He did it before. He's going to do it again.
And he'll do it with more impunity based upon what you just said. No guardrails. None
whatsoever. And not only that, any guardrails that he had around him personally, staff and stuff, we all know that's not going to happen again. He's gone to school on that. There aren't any of them around. So I just think no, without the guardrails, he will do this. And I think that's part of the problem. I think it's kind of like 46% of Americans will support him no matter what,
Why?
huh?
Why?
I no clue other than
46%
they
of this
want it.
country, 46% of this country is not stupid. 46% of this
Right.
country are not racists. They're not sexists. They're not misogynists. They're not xenophobes. They're not homophobes. They're not transphobes. They're not Islamophobes. They're not anti Semites. So why is there right now, recent polls are suggesting a statistical tie between Harris and Trump at 48% each? My question to you, I really want to ask, is given that Kamala is the sitting vice president with a strong record, with a record that, again, is based on unity, progress, and rebuilding, why do you think that she's not pulling ahead into like 50, 60%? Because it just reflects so poorly on voter sentiment.
Well, because 46% of the country, like it or not, they may not be any of those things, but they're willing to live with it. They want it. They want him. They want what he's promising, which is chaos and whatever. I mean, going back, whatever in their head that they want him to represent, he sells it and he connects with them on that. And you know that he has that ability, Michael. And so that 46 is there. There is 46. There's another 46 who absolutely will will vote for literally anybody who's breathing to stop him from being president again. It's the 8% left at 46. There's 8% that just really aren't paying, they're casual voters, are not paying a lot of attention to either of these things. They're thinking of staying home. They're thinking of voting for a third party, or they're thinking of voting for the lesser of two evils, whatever. And that's who Kamala Harris is fighting with him over. And I think the more he doubles down, the more he does these crazy rallies, I think fewer of them are thinking about staying home, at least in the polls I'm looking at. Fewer of them are voting third party, and more of them are voting for Kamala Harris. Grudgingly, some of them, but they're going to vote for her. I think that in her ground game, and the fact that with those voters, Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. Those three things make it, in my view, what makes me so optimistic that we've got a lot of work to do. There's still 21, a little bit less than 3 weeks left. But we do the work, we're going to win this thing. But damn it, it's going to be close.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing that, again, the poll that I saw had 48%, and it's actually 4% is the undecided that remain. And I'm shocked that there's even still 4% undecided. How could, after all the shit that we've been going through on either side, how is there still 4%? I don't know. Does that 4% come out and vote? Does that 4% just turn around and say, fuck it, I really don't care at this point? Let the whole fucking country burn down. I don't care. I don't believe the polls. I don't believe that it's 48-48. I really don't. Even those people, I think, who are turning around and saying right now that, oh yeah, I'm going to vote Trump, that they're really not voting Trump, but they just they don't want to fight with their family, their neighbors, the other MAGA morons that are there. I am so confused. I'm so confused with the numbers in comparison to what I hear and I feel from the street. Women, how any woman, Republican, Democrat, Independent, could vote for a guy who takes pride in being the guy that overturned a 50-year stare decisis on Roe versus Wade, who's now limited women's rights, who talks about women's rights like if he's the commander in The Handmaid's Tale. I just don't fully understand And then you talk about issues like climate change. He doesn't believe in it. He doesn't believe in genetics, unless it means that he's really smart, right? Like he was talking about his uncle who passed away like 50 years ago, right? I mean, it's truly fantastic. I just don't see the numbers. I just don't, and I can't understand these polls.
I have said for months and months and months, this is going to be a 46-53 race. That he is stuck at 46. He's not going to go higher than that. And I really do believe that she's going to, because of the turnout differential in terms of her ability to get people out, the ground game. Biden defeated him 51 to 46.7 in 2020. I think we're headed to a bigger margin than that. But if you think about that margin, think about how he beat him 51, 46.7, right? Look at how close it was in Georgia, how close it was in Pennsylvania, in Arizona. So even if she does get to 52, 46 or 53, 47 somewhere, which I think is where we're likely to end up, some of those states all of those battleground states are going to remain to be very, very close. The difference there being, though, I think there's a bunch of them. One, the organization that the Biden-Harris campaign was putting together and investing in for the last 2 years, it's in those states. Harris inherited that, but she also infused it with energy, more money, more volunteers. So that means I think she can lift up some of those margins in those battleground states. And then on top of it, Michael, North Carolina is going to be weird, man. But Biden only lost North Carolina by 74,000 votes. And you look, Mark Robinson, their nominee for governor there. I mean, he's losing that thing by like 20 points, man.
You just took the words out of my mouth. That's why I'm saying I don't understand what they're talking about. If the governor is losing by 20 points, most people vote up and down ballot. This isn't like the SAT or the ACT exam, right? Or the bar exam where you're A, B, D, C, A, B, C, D. It doesn't work like that. People generally vote up and down ballot. Why? Because it makes perfect sense. It's just easier. And, maybe there's one guy that you like better than others running for a local judge because you know him. But for the most part, if you're not voting for the governor of a state, how is it possible that you're not going to vote for Kamala Harris? On the same notion, though, because that makes no sense to me, how it's even close. You take, for example, Michigan. All right. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden walked the picket line with the unions, all right, with the United Auto Workers. Trump slaps on a bunch of T-shirts to a bunch of folk standing there in Michigan that aren't even part of the union, right? So he puts on union workers for Trump, but it's a fucking lie. And now that it's been exposed, everybody knows it. So how is it that even Michigan, we have now seen, again, a very, very unified, a progressive, and a rebuilding Kamala Harris. But from Trump, you get lies, chaos, you get erratic behavior. You got Shady Vance sitting there, couch fucking wherever the hell he's going. I mean, I just don't see it. I really don't.
No, well, one, I think you're right. I don't. Part of what I think is going on, though, is that they're red waving the polls again. I mean, remember in 2022, in October, all of a sudden the Republican pollsters started dumping polls that said it's going to be a big red wave, big red wave. I think they dropped something like 24 polls in the last month that showed like big surge for Republicans. And so the press bought it, the pundits bought it, and of course the Democrats went into hand wringing. And it turned out there was no red wave. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was a red mirage. Suddenly, October of 2024, guess what, Michael? They're doing it again. Last week, I think they dumped like 34 different Republican companies, who do Republican polling, dumped these polls. the averager, the polling aggregators put them all in their averages, and oh gosh, it's really getting tight. Um, uh, when a week before that they had her up by 5 or 6, and now the average has is closing to 48 or whatever, wherever it is, wherever they think it is right now. But it's because it's basically the whole system is being gamed by the Republicans and by Trump again, to kind of like, by the way, and I think the real reason they're doing this isn't to make the race look close. What they're doing, Michael, and you know this better than anybody, what they're going to do, these polls they're going to dump enough polls so he actually goes into the lead in all the polling averages before election day, so that he can say, can do his "they're stealing it" thing for the last couple of weeks. Beware the steal, stop the steal. And at 10 o'clock on election night, he's going to walk out there, and Steve Bannon, probably wrote the damn speech for him where he's going to declare he won, and don't watch them steal it from us overnight. It's all part of the setup. The whole red waving polls is not just to sort of demoralize Democratic activists or to get people to go, you give up, or that cause the hand wringing. That's a side effect. The real reason they're doing this is they're going to cook the damn thing, and the aggregators and the poll averages are going to go along with it and average them all in. And you watch, it's going to show Trump being ahead going into election day by a point or two, but it'll be enough for him to start peppering. He's not going to start, he's already doing it, but he'll be really, look at the polls, I'm ahead. Then you have election day votes being counted first, and election day, he's going to win those votes most likely in places like Pennsylvania. And so he'll be ahead. I
think he gets his ass handed to him in Pennsylvania. When you got a guy as popular, for example, as Josh Shapiro, and Shapiro out there stumping for him on a daily basis, and you got guys like Norm Eisen that's out there, along with Kamala going out there, and Tim Walz going out there, and you got Scaramucci's running out there, and you got the girls from I've Had It podcast out there. You got a lot of people with a lot of attention, right, who draw crowds, who are out there turning around and saying the same thing like I'm saying to you here. One party is a party of unity. The other is a party of chaos. One is a party of being progressive and to moving forward with honor and with a future in terms of rights. The other one wants to take away your rights. But it kind of brings me to a question I want to ask you about suburban women, because suburban women were a critical voting bloc in 2020 that leaned heavily towards Joe Biden. Now, with Trump's erratic rallies and his targeting of all of these cultural issues and use of fear tactics, how do you think that the suburban vote is trending right now in 2024? And is that a base that Kamala can solidify?
Oh, she's definitely solidifying that. She's the gap there is just off the charts record support for her, particularly suburban women, college educated whites. She's breaking every record a Democrat's ever set with those groups, and so but the corresponding gap is with white men is gone the other way. I mean, it's wider for her. Less men supporting her than Biden, for example. And that's why, Scranton Joe won with a slightly different coalition in Pennsylvania, where he was getting a little bit more blue collar white men than the usual Democrat does because of I think his affinity with the state. She's lost a little bit with that group, a little bit less than Biden did, but she's growing with Blacks, Latinos, suburban women, opening up that gap much bigger than he ever could have, or any Democrat has, particularly with the suburban women and white college educated voters. So that's sort of where the back and forth has gone on. But I'm with you. I think she wins Pennsylvania. The difference, though, is that because of the way he's conditioned his voters to not vote by mail, even though his own strategists say don't say that, he still does it.
Right. If you're like me, the safety of your home and your loved ones, it's not just a priority, it's your everything. See, the problem is old school home security systems, they only take action once someone is already in your home. Simply Safe Home Security, it's changing that with its new Active Guard outdoor protection. It is the only home security designed to prevent crimes before they happen. You see, I love Simply Safe because when I'm trying to wind my day down and I'm trying to catch some needed Z's, the last thing I want to be thinking about is security. Simply Safe, with its state-of-the-art technology, it gives me the peace of mind that I so desperately need. With ActiveGuard, Simply Safe's 24/7 monitoring agents, they keep a close watch over your property and they actually stop crimes before they happen. The cameras use advanced AI to tell the difference between friendly faces like family or neighbors and potential threats, alerting agents to suspicious individuals before they get too close to the house. These agents can talk directly to the intruder. They can sound a loud siren. They can flash lights and even alert the police. While other systems only react after the break-in, Simply Safe combines live monitoring and proactive protection both outside and inside your home. You see, that's why I trust Simply Safe with my own home security every single day. And I want you to have the same peace of mind. So protect your home with 50% off a new Simply Safe system, plus a free indoor security camera when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. So just visit simplysafe.com/mea culpa. That's Simply Safe, SIMPLISAFE.com/mea culpa. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
The people who vote that day, they're going to get counted first. So that's going to initially, he's going to get defeated in Pennsylvania big, I think. But the problem is, polls close at 8. Those first votes are going to be counted. They're going to show him more of his voters in those early counts, and that's why I think they've got him primed to go out and claim victory right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when all the mail-in ballots and absentees and early voting and everything comes in, he'll get swamped. But he'll be preaching that it got stolen, and then we'll be. I actually think the most important days may be the 76 days between November 5th and January 20th until Kamala's sworn in, because he will do. You Michael know better than anybody what he'll do during those 76 days, because his back will be against the wall.
So let's talk about that. That's a great topic. It's not even one that I had listed here, to bring up. What will Donald Trump do? And this is an interesting thing that he and his minion right now want you to believe, that if he loses, that there's going to be chaos and violence, there's going to be blood in the streets, that his MAGA supporters are not going to stand for yet another Trump defeat when, it's being stolen from him. And I got to be honest with you. I'm not buying it. Not for 1 second. Why? Because a lot of the maniacs that we saw, for example, storm the Capitol, the Oath Keepers, the One Percenters, the Proud Boys, many of them spent some time in jail. And Donald Trump lied to them too when he said, I will protect you. I will lawyer you up and so on. You did nothing wrong. You're patriots, you're warriors. You got the guy Stuart Rhodes doing 18 fucking years. 18 years. You got the other guy who's doing like 12. And where is Trump? Not even shelling out a nickel for commissary. They are all on their own. I don't believe that you're going to see the same. I remember hearing the same horse shit when he said that if he's found guilty in New York for the civil matter now,
I remember
there's
that.
going to be hell to pay. Then he turned around. Nobody even showed up. Then he turned around and he goes, if criminally, the Manhattan DA case, he's found guilty, he goes, I pity New York. I pity Manhattan. There wasn't 3 people out there. Not 3. I mean, it was a big fucking waste putting up all those gates. The only people that were behind the gates were the press.
Yep. It was, and he'd walk up to the gates every day, but for what?
Right.
It's crazy.
The same way that when he came out of his building at Trump Tower and it was shown, they were videotaping him, he turns to the right and he starts waving to the crowd. The problem is he didn't realize the camera was behind him. There was nobody he was waving to. He was waving to ongoing traffic.
But there's so many things, Michael, that he can pull between the 5th and January 20th with his minions.
Enlighten my listeners, my friend. Enlighten us.
I'll give you one example. There's a committee called the House Administration Committee. It meets on, I think, January 3rd. The House Administration Committee is the old House, the one that's sitting now with Mike Johnson and those guys. It's made up of 8 Republicans and 4 Democrats. That committee is charged with overseeing the election of members of Congress and issuing credentials for the new members who will be starting to serve on the 6th of January. So that 8-4 committee can decide we're not sitting these 8 Democrats who defeated Republicans. There's some questions about their election. There's a question about the vote. We're not saying we won't seat you forever, but we're going to need a week or 2 to look into this, keeping the majority Republican that would be overseeing and Johnson as Speaker as we go into January 6th and certification, all that stuff. I mean, I'm not. This is clearly a possibility, and if you and I both know that if Donald Trump claims he won on November 5th, and some of these states start to mess with which electors they're going to send, and he's calls. We're talking about calling up and stopping. Border bills, and immigration reform bills. Well, he'll call Mike Johnson, and they will certainly use that committee they could use that committee. And as you say, we should be saying they will use that committee.
Yeah. So
this is one example out there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He will reach out to Mike Johnson. He will reach out to guys like Josh Hawley, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right. Ted Cruz. He'll reach out to his acolytes. However, I have a funny feeling that if he loses this election, they come to almost like a coming to Jesus moment where they're like, okay, he's lost. Kamala's going to be the president for possibly 8 years, right? What about my own salvation? Because now that, for example, right, that there's a lot of harm that can come to them individually, and knowing that Trump is the most disloyal human being on the planet,
right?
He's not going to protect them. And by the way, protect them how? That he has no power. That's the beauty of the whole thing. That's what makes it so different than the last time in 2020 when he was still sitting for those 75 days as the president, when he ignored for an hour and 6 minutes or an hour and 9 minutes the raid on the Capitol. So I'm not of the mindset that people should be thinking, oh my God, if I vote, I got to vote for Trump, because if I vote for Kamala and Trump loses, there's going to be bloodshed, there's going to be shootings in the street. And so I'm not buying that shit, not for a second.
No, I think what it does point to other differences. Kamala Harris will be presiding over the Senate, not Mike Johnson or or Pence, who ended up doing the right thing there. But I'm saying, but she'll be sitting over it. And the second thing, and this I think really does speak to what's important on Election Day, the real need to win as many House seats for Democrats as we possibly can, because the more that there is a Democratic majority, two things: they can't play games with that committee I just talked about. If it's a 20-seat majority, they might be able to claim crap about 3 or 4 seats, but they can't claim all 20. And at the same time, that majority will be the majority that sits over any questions about, some state sending a different set of electors or whatever over. And they're not going to go along with it. The key is to make sure it's not Mike Johnson and a Republican majority that's sitting there, because that does enable, as you know, they will absolutely enable this fascist cult to take over, and they'll go the other way and become members of it. They already are. But you know what I'm saying?
So, it's going back to the 48, the lion, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I try to reflect and say, okay, let's assume hypothetically that the numbers are in that ballpark. And I start to say to myself, I don't believe Americans are stupid, even the uneducated ones, the ones that Donald, is attracted to. What bothers me is you have Kamala Harris, who's the first woman, and she's the first, woman of color.
Right.
She's the first Black woman, right? At the top of the ticket ever.
Yeah.
And yet, as a result of this, is it really that group of people have such an issue that she's facing these unique challenges? So the real question I really want to ask you is if in fact that race and her gender are playing into factors why Trump is still even a viable candidate. What does she need to do to play down these sexist, racist undertones by, I hate to say it, by Republicans, if anything is even at all possible?
Well, I think that's starting to, I think the campaign is doing that. She's doing it. I think it is part of these generals speaking out. I think it is part of Liz Cheney and Duncan in Georgia and other Republicans who are standing up and being counted and saying, hey, actually sort of giving permission. There's a permission structure to Nikki Haley Republicans to don't do this, that you can cross over and vote for a Democrat. I can tell you, Michael, from looking at focus groups, it's amazing what holds people back. I mean, I've been in groups where Republican women literally say out loud, verbalize that they are hanging by their fingernails off the edge of a cliff to stay within the Republican Party because they're so appalled at what Donald Trump and all this MAGA and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And they're literally talking like these terrified faces, and they're literally talking about hanging from a cliff. And then when you say, okay, but I got that, so then why won't you? What's the problem here? You have another choice. They literally, these are people who for 40 years or 33 years or whatever, in their entire life, they have never voted for a Democrat once, not once.
Okay.
And when they literally look at their shoes, and because it would mean I'd have to vote for one of them, and they spit the word Democrat out like it's poison, because that's how they've been conditioned over, not by Trump, by 20, 30, 40 years of the Democrats or whatever, socialists, communists, whatever the pedophiles, whatever the hell they've been taught. That's the barrier. That's that barrier. I'm just saying you cannot. It's hard for me to describe to you. As much as I just explained it, I sit there on the other side of that one-way mirror, looking at these people and going like, this should be, no, it is, they cannot bring themselves to vote for a Democrat for the first time, which gets to your point. This is something I wanted to say when you were talking about how you can't believe all this stuff. So this gets back to the explanation that can't be right. In other words, if in North Carolina, 20 points are voting for the Democrat for governor, then for the, you have to have Trump, either a bunch of Trump voters voting for a Democratic governor, which gets to this whole thing. I'm hanging by a cliff, so that's not right, or those people who were actually in a polarized place and that we all believe we're in, and a lot of those people who are voting for Stein for governor of North Carolina are also going to vote for Kamala Harris and not vote for Trump. I mean, so I think we're starting to get to those. I mean, again, a lot of the ways that would happen in 2020 when it was the nominees that Trump fought for were so crazy that he actually, caused them to lose the Senate seats that they should have won.
That's right.
I think some of that's going on, and I think the ticket splitters, there are not any pro-democracy ticket splitters here, okay? That's not what anybody who's going into the booth who's voting for Kamala Harris is going right down. She's not then going to go vote for Mark Robinson in North Carolina. That's not going to happen. So the ticket splitters all have to be these people in the Republican Party hanging by a cliff, and enough of them in some of these places are jumping off the cliff and coming over to Kamala Harris. And I think it is the permission structure. That's why Liz Cheney is so important. It's why Dick Cheney is so important. It's why
it's funny that you say that about Liz Cheney. I agree with Nikki Haley, but remember, Liz Cheney is really the Republican Party. I mean, she epitomizes everything about the Republican Party. She's as vanilla comes. I mean, in my whole life, I don't know if I've ever agreed with any Cheney, though I have the utmost of respect for her. It's more like the Nikki Haley vote is, I think, more in line with Kamala Harris because she too is a woman of color, right? And what this does is it sort of separates out those that, one, will not vote for Kamala because she's a woman, and two, they won't vote for her because she's a black woman. And that's why the Nikki Haley vote, I think, is what actually puts the nail in the coffin with Trump.
I agree.
30% of the Republican Party.
Well, there was a great poll that was done only of Republicans. And they asked Haley's supporters what they were doing, who they were voting for. Trump was getting 47% of Haley of those voters, and Kamala Harris was getting, I think, 36%. If that happens on election day, you just hit it. That's going to be the thing that puts her over in Georgia,
everywhere.
In Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, Haley got 250,000 votes against Trump in the primary. So figure 37%. Remember, Biden only won it by 14,000 votes or something like that. So if 37% of that 250 actually is, comes out and votes for Kamala, that's more than enough on that margin there. So we'll see. Things are happening, though, that I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, you and me too. But again, at every single rally by Trump, every single one, it is filled with grievances, with attacks. The other day, he attacks once again the media, and he cries out fake news. The funniest thing is, he's got this shtick where he likes to point, you in the back, fake news, you know who you are. Meanwhile, it was his rally, and it was his people that were covering it because CNN wasn't going to be there. MSNBC wasn't there. It was his people that were in the back, but he still has to make that message. He has to have that vitriolic message, right? This strategy, maybe it resonates with his MAGA supporters, but his MAGA supporters only amount to about 40% or 42% of the Republican Party. That's just of the Republican Party. That's not all voters.
Right.
My question to you is, how does Kamala go ahead? How does her campaign counter this narrative without getting dragged into Trump's media wars?
Yeah, because you can't take the bait. You do, and you're fighting on his culture. You're fighting in his turf. You're taking the bait, and you're now off into a debate about something that is just inflaming his people and not doing anything to get the people that you need. So I think they've actually have done a pretty good job of avoiding that. But he's still, I mean, it's the press, right? He can still interject, and the press falls for it, and then then they're chasing her around.
They do.
They don't do the same thing the other way, by the way, and we all know that too. I mean, he gets away with things they would never let Kamala Harris get away with. Look at the whole medical report stuff,
right?
Where she puts out a full medical report, and he's like still putting out a one-page letter from like 2 years ago or something, from a guy. Yeah, right, big doctor, sure, but it's all. But no one's going to. It's not going to impact him. But not with the 40% MAGA, and I think that group of Republicans who just still, for whatever, it's their tribe, it's their party. They've never voted any other way, and hopefully, what I think a lot of those people may do and make the pollsters really wrong is that group may just stay home. I think some of them may follow Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney and vote for Kamala. And I used to think a lot of them would vote third party, but I now think it's likely that if they can't cross the bridge over to Kamala Harris, they may just not show up.
No, that works. That works for us too, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Because then you sit and you listen, going back to the whole concept of Trump's fear mongering. That's all that his rallies are. I've never heard a politician, I've never heard anybody talk about America in such stark, horrible terms as Trump does. It's America's becoming a shithole. It's filled with crime and drugs and murder and rape and this and that. I've never heard anybody ever, a politician, I don't care if the politician is running for the school board. I've never heard them shit on this country. And then I would ask him, I would like to ask him, if America's so bad, what country do you think is better? And what country would you move to so that we can help you to get status there? It makes no sense. But he fearmongers about crime, immigration, the migrants, the economy. He lies about, listen, Mexicans, he lies about the Jews. He lies about the Haitians. Now there's Venezuelans. And then could you explain this one to me also? He talks now about migrants from the Congo, but he talks about migrants from the Congo as if they're Venezuelan. I'm really lost on that. Yeah, but his supporters see the unhinged, rambling stupidity, the stupidity of it. How does she take advantage?
He you know this. He is, it's fight or flight. He is literally just using fear and creating fear of the other wherever he can. It doesn't matter whether Black, Latino, whether it's migrants. It's fear of the other. Fear of the people coming to eat your cats and dogs. Fear. I mean, just the caravan is coming. They're gonna come to your suburbs, and so it's fear. And he feeds on the fear. And the reason it works is because the more you hit the fear part of the brain over and over again, the more people go into fear and respond to it. And that's what he's been doing since it came down the escalator. And fortunately, well over 50%, maybe only 53% of the country has not yet, no matter how hard he hits that fear button, 53%, a majority of the country has not fallen for it and doesn't want it. And so that, I think, is what she's playing for. I mean, she's playing for that 53. I think she's going to get there.
Modern diet makes it really difficult to keep things in balance. I mean, extra sugar, it's just found in so many foods. And no matter how hard I try, I'm just not eating as much fiber as I want to. While getting enough fiber is a challenge in itself. By drinking sugar to fiber every day, your microbiome gets more of what it needs and less of what it doesn't, which leads to a more balanced microbiome, and that's the key to a healthy gut. One stick pack of sugar to fiber will help you get a daily dose of fiber from the foods that you've already eaten. So here's what I do. Every day, I simply put a pack of sugar to fiber in my water bottle. I mean, you can't even tell that it's in there. And I love knowing that I'm supporting my gut health with this routine. Sugar to fiber, it's the newest product from ZBiotics. They also have, get a load of this, they also have a pre-alcohol probiotic that's available to purchase to help with rough mornings after drinking. So go right now to zbiotics.com/meaculpa and use code meaculpa at checkout for 15% off any ZBiotics probiotic. ZBiotics has a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're not satisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. And thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode.
You know, we talk about this on my podcast, that Trippy Show, all the time. I'd love to have you come up on it. Over.
You tell me when. How about Friday?
Friday, yeah. Okay. Well, no, let's do it. Let's record it. But I mean, because we get, I think we talk more about the numbers and, you know, in each state and things like that. I'd like to get your perspective on what's going on there. But I do think you're right that it doesn't add up. You look at the polling, nothing, you know, it doesn't make sense. You look at North Carolina's a great example that you made. It just doesn't, you know.
It doesn't compute. It just doesn't compute. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
People do. And if the denominator is X and the numerator is Y, you can't just switch Y and X the way that you want. And so in order to make it an even race, let me throw one additional pile of horse shit into the Trump shit soup. All right? His whole MAGA base, his rallies. Look, I remember the rallies in 2016, and I remember watching even the rallies in 2020 while I was incarcerated. I remember them, all right? You're not seeing the energy that you saw for sure in 2016 and definitively in 2020. They've lost steam. People are leaving during his speeches. You never saw that before. The speeches are unhinged. In fact, at Trump's Coachella event, they made people park 5 miles away in a parking area, not because they were doing it to protect him. That wasn't an FBI or a Secret Service plan. It was so that people can't leave. You have to get on the bus and you have to take it to that parking lot. Here's the problem. To show you how little Trump gives a shit about any of these supporters, he didn't pay the bus company, and there had no way to get transportation back to their vehicles over 5+ miles away. And it's not just 5 miles away. By the way, it's not just 5 miles away. It was also in an area that nobody knew how to get to.
Right. Crazy.
Right. Well, so look, that just goes into the mixture. Give me your analysis on that.
No, I think that's right. You know, I also think, Michael, I don't know about you, but I drive around, you know, what were MAGA neighborhoods, you know, in 16 and 20, and the number of signs way down. The number of they're not. You don't just see this outpour like it used to be, sign after sign after sign when you drive into, you know, a Republican neighborhood. So along with the crowds dwindling and people walking away, I do think people are just getting tired of the act. I mean, even his own MAGA people are bored with it. It's gotten old for them. It's not as exciting. I think that also gets into the differential of Election Day. I mean, I think there's still a lot of energy and excitement for Kamala Harris with a strong organization. Of course, Trump dismantles the RNC, get out the vote operation by putting his daughter-in-law in charge of the damn place. I mean, because he needed the money for his legal bills, I guess. But I mean, so I just think all this adds that computes to me. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You look at that and it computes. Kamala Harris has got a big advantage on Election Day. What doesn't compute is how all the polling and the gaming that the Republican pollsters are doing. But why does the press keep falling for it? That's right.
Look, I hear from my parents on a daily basis. They ask me these questions about what how can they be 48%? How? I don't understand it. Yada yada yada. Okay, let's break it down a little further, because I'm so happy to have you here. I mean, you are a preeminent Democratic strategist and you really understand this shit. The youth vote. Now, I hear from Republicans only that they suggest there'll be a weaker turnout from the young voters. I say bullshit. I say the 18 to 25 vote, they're going to be out there in record numbers because of things like Roe v. Wade, right? And because they're watching rights be taken away from them. You have the Latino voters, the same thing. They say that Trump is gaining ground with Latino voters. How and why? What has he done for Latino voters other than criticize them? And then on top of that, you also have you have the women vote, which is definitively going to Kamala Harris, and you have the black vote. So just take those four groups alone.
Well, I give you one. So Biden got 61% of the Latino vote in 2020. 61%. Kamala Harris is at 59% in the polls. So, she's not doing as well as Biden with Latinos. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's the same. You and I, that's the same number. It's the same within the margin of error. Not only that, we're still 3 weeks away, and they're banging away. And they're going to be out there on Election Day pulling people out. She's going to do better than Biden did with Latinos when this is watch. The same thing with blacks. The same thing with young people for the very reasons you're talking about. The same thing with women. Forget not just suburban women, but women writ large because of Dobbs. We didn't have the Dobbs decision in 2020 in terms of what that impact on women and on Republican women. Many of them who are pro-life, but think this thing is, it was better to have Roe v. Wade there, and have and have at least exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, et cetera, who think, the banning IVF like the Alabama court did, going back to the 1800s like the Arizona court did. And hey, it's great. The states can decide. They don't buy that anymore. So all that has changed. And I think that you can't how has all that happened? And yet, she's in a really tight race. It is going to be close because basically 46, 52, 47, 53, somewhere in there is close, particularly as you get back into Georgia and some of these in the battleground states. But if you do a little better than Biden did in 2020 and you have a better ground game than he did, and you have all these other factors that you and I've just talked about with women and young people, et cetera, we just got to do the work, do the job, get him out, hold his feet to the fire, and be ready to fight him every step of the way November 5th when he starts his lying crap and he tries to work his minions to save him from from not only just losing, but meaning he's going to have to go face some justice in the court system.
Yeah. And one of the things that he is so fucking good at is disinformation, especially when it comes to disinformation via social media. I mean, that's really what his rallies are. They're a gigantic cesspool of disinformation going out to a whole group of people it's all baseless shit, theories, disinformation, lies, the whole bit. And the question I really have for you is, now that you have, for example, Elon Musk with his platform of X and Truth Social, or Untruth Social, as I should say, continuing to regurgitate. You see, his Untruth Social platform is, I have more people on my platform than he does, right? That's not going to move the needle. But fucking X, with Elon Musk continuing to regurgitate this disinformation campaign, that's somewhat nerve-wracking and a little bit scary. I understand Trump's need for somebody like Elon Musk, but I still don't see that as being the catalyst for a change here.
No, except that it will inflame the anger, the divisiveness, the amplification of violence that Donald will be fomenting November 5th and beyond, that they're stalling it from us. That algorithm will be amplifying all that stuff. That's why, earlier today, you and I were DMing back and forth about sez.us, sez.us, because what we're doing is forming an alternative to X that's pro-democracy, that builds on promoting the kind of discourse we need in a vibrant democracy, where we can disagree, but and we should, where we disagree. You and I have over the years, but we can come together for democracy and for amplifying a pro-democracy message and conversation. So I really hope people will check it out. It's sez.us. It's a brand new platform, because it won't change anything between now and November. I got that. But over the long haul, it's time for us to start. They own We Rent. They own Fox News. They own Breitbart. They own
Newsmax. They own OAN.
Yeah.
They
so
own,
it's MeidasTouch, is the Lincoln Projects, the says us. We've got to start. We've got to stop as a pro-democracy. We've stop renting. So we buy ads on Fox. We buy ads on X. They make money. They use it to kill us. We're starting a social network by and for the community, and not to build a castle to one guy who makes the rules and then holds us all hostage with his algorithm and does his bidding for Donald Trump and MAGA. So I hope people check it out. I hope, Michael, you'll sign up. And
I'm going to be signing up on it as soon as we get off.
Great.
I was actually in the process of doing it, and then I realized, oh my God, I have the podcast starting in 3 minutes. So, but as soon as I get off, it's very simple to sign up. You just put in the information, 1, 2, 3, boom. So look, Joe, thank you so much for joining us. It's like I said, I speak to so many people, whether it's my own family, whether it's friends, we go out for dinner, and everybody asks the same question. He's such a fucking maniac.
Yeah, how does
he's so unhinged. He's got legal battles up the wazoo. He's got, no substance. He has, as he'll tell you, a concept of a plan, a concept of a policy. Kamala's out there talking about policies, what she plans to do, and all the attacks by media seem to be against her, only because there's nothing to say to somebody when you say, well, I have a concept of a plan. Well, how do you attack them? What do you mean? And so on. I still don't believe that Americans are stupid enough to fall for this crap again. I think they saw in 2016 through 2020 the fact that nothing got done. There was no accomplishments, not even something for the greatest builder, the greatest in the world to build a wall, right? And that Mexico was supposed to pay for it. Nothing happened. You remember he did a whole thing about going to the Middle East and Japan and China, and he came back allegedly with $750 billion that Steve Mnuchin was going to put out through bonds and make it $7.5 trillion and rebuild the infrastructure of all of America. That never happened either. Affordable Care Act, he wanted to tear it down. Yeah. That never happened. Nothing that Trump ever said that he was going to do was accomplished. And that's why I really do believe that this election is not going to be as tight as the polls or as the media is trying to keep you glued to. But under no circumstances am I saying that we shouldn't still be fighting like hell. We need to fight like hell to the very end and ensure an absolute end of Trumpism, because as I say in my book, Revenge, the last paragraph, Trumpism is fascism, and we must eradicate it from our body politic.
And the bigger the margin, the better. That's what it's going to kill it. We have
Exactly.
It doesn't matter that we think we've got this. We've got to do the work to make it as big as we possibly can, both popular and
Joe,
electoral.
thank you, my brother. I appreciate you.